We sat down and I said, "Now I'll get some photos of you with the new dress on." Never expecting this to happen. In modern times, UFOologists and paranormal investigators go out of their way to experience events not of this world. It's a thrill to discover something that just may be able to prove the existence of the supernatural or extraterrestrial. And while those who seek out these experiences do produce evidence to solidify their beliefs, almost as often unsuspecting people make discoveries that they could have never been prepared for. In the summer of 1964, an English fireman had such an experience. The 1960s saw a rise in UFO interest. The famous Roswell UFO crash was only a decade prior, and fear of the legendary Men in Black was on the rise. People with intrigue and fear watch the skies for strange lights so that they may be able to spot a possible UFO. The alien phenomenon took a new form, though, when Jim Templeton, a native of Carlisle, England, snapped a photo of his 5-year-old daughter that happened to have a strange figure lingering in the background. Templeton and his family had been having a picnic out in Burgh Marsh overlooking Solway Firth. The group consisted of Jim, his wife, Annie, and their daughter, Elizabeth, who was the subject of the infamous photo. Other than the Templetons, an older couple sat nearby, out of their way, in their car. Armed with a Zeiss Contax Pentacon FSLR camera, Jim decided to take a few photos. He snapped a couple before having his daughter, dressed in a brand new dress, gather some flowers and pose before the hill behind her. With his wife standing behind him, he took the photo and they went on about their picnic. Everything was normal, until Jim Templeton went to have the day's photos developed. That's when the chemist bringing them into a solid form noticed the figure looming behind Templeton's daughter. The intruder appeared to be dressed in an attire that was not fitting for a warm summer's day in the marsh. Instead, he was better fitted to be upon Apollo 11, who landed on the moon 5 years later. It looked to be a spaceman, an astronaut, dressed in a white suit with a dark dome on top his head. It was a creature that Jim had not noticed at the time wandering around, and had not seen in the viewfinder when taking the photo. Uncertain as to who or what he had captured, Templeton took his photo to Carlisle police, who found nothing out of the ordinary and were uninterested in it. Kodak had a look at the picture as well and met the same conclusion. The mass population disagreed, however, and soon the image of the creature who would come to don the name Solway Firth Spaceman spread like wildfire, gracing the front of newspapers worldwide. It was then that reports came from a few Australian technicians who had aborted a test launch of a Blue Streak missile just days after the photo was taken, that they had seen two men who looked almost exactly the same. According to them, the cancellation of the missile test was due to them spotting a couple spaceman-looking figures near the missile. Oddly enough, the missile that was being tested had been developed just miles from where Templeton's photo had been taken. Things only got stranger from there. At the height of the photo's popularity, Templeton was reportedly approached by two men dressed all in black. They referred to themselves only by numbers and claimed to be officials sent by the government. They demanded that Jim take them to the spot that the picture was taken. Templeton traveled with them back to Burgh Marsh, where the government men began to become angry and threatening when Jim would not admit that he had hoaxed the photo. Eventually, the men left Jim behind and took off in their car. He was forced to walk back to town. Templeton had been visited by what was known as the Men in Black amongst the growing UFO community. 50-plus years after the Solway Firth Spaceman first started circulating, the photo is still synonymous with that of aliens, Men in Black, and UFOs. But Is there a rational explanation? Yes. Templeton never claimed to know exactly what he captured, and while he enjoyed hearing others' theories, he was never the one to decide what the spaceman truly was. And what the spaceman truly is Templeton's wife, Annie. The photo that captured the Solway Firth Spaceman was one of a group that Jim took that day. Among the other pictures is this one, showing not just Elizabeth but Jim's wife in full view. She's pictured wearing a powder blue, sleeveless dress with short, cropped hair. If you take her wardrobe and then wash it out, the colors become muddled and white. What the spaceman really is an overexposed Annie Templeton, standing with her back to the camera, a hand on her hip. Her blue dress is visibly darker than the washed-out white of her bare arms, and the seams of the dress are visible in the photo. The helmet is simply her hair darkening from the exposure to make what appears to be the facepiece with the sun reflecting off the top, to show what would be the cloth atop an astronaut's helmet. Adjusting the light and color balance of the photo makes this all the more evident. But what are the men in black? Templeton himself claims that he believes his men in black experience to be the doing of two jokesters trying to mess with him. So did Jim Templeton truly hoax his photo? Those who had the pleasure of interviewing the man before he died in 2011 didn't think so, and it's very easy to back this up. The contact's Pentacon F happened to have a viewfinder that only showed 70% of the picture, which cuts off exactly where the spaceman would appear, meaning Jim probably didn't see his wife in the background, and she could have very well moved out of the way by the time he put the camera down. Perhaps he simply misremembered Annie standing behind him, leading to the perfect storm that became the Solway Firth Spaceman. We're not alone in the universe. Whether you believe that aliens visit us or not, there's one thing for certain. Somewhere out there is life just as or more intelligent than us. Jim Templeton may not have captured an example of that, but with as many pieces of UFO and extraterrestrial evidence that come out every year, isn't it possible that maybe one of them has managed to capture the real thing?